your station of choice, Africa Independent Television, AIT. The program is People, Politics and Power. I am Imoni Amarere. Now, today on the program, we shall be addressing key issues of leadership, unity, and peaceful coexistence in a united Nigeria. At a time when agitations for a reconsideration of the basis of Nigeria's existence as a united nation continues to dominate national discourse. The question of Nigeria's unity has been the subject of debate for so many decades, practically throughout its existence as an independent country. It has resulted in agitations by different nationalities that make up the Union for self-determination of one sort or the other, thus threatening its corporate existence. These agitations have assumed different colorations, such as resource control, resource ownership, devolution of powers, return to regionalism, fiscal or true federalism, and many other acronyms. A new twist was added to the agitations recently with the issuance of quit notices and counter-quit notices by youth groups and militant organizations, and in the process, heightening the already boiling tension in the country. Many questions arise therefrom. What is giving rise to the various agitations? Will a restructured Nigeria assuage the feelings and desires of the apostles of a breakup? In other words, how far can the concept of restructuring go in reordering Nigeria? Are the demands for restructuring realistic at this point in time? And if they are, what is the best option and approach to restructuring that will not hurt any group or any region, but benefit all, with the goal of strengthening the unity of Nigeria? These and many more are some of the issues we shall be interrogating on the program this day. And I'm joined in the studio by a lawyer, an economist, and a former Nigerian minister. He is the ninth President General of the Apex Igbo Socio-Cultural Group, Oha-Na-Eze Ndi-Igbo, Dr. John Nnia Nwodo. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Manny.
All right. Well, just yesterday, Yoruba leaders and elders met in the ancient city of Ibadan, the political capital of the southwest geopolitical zone. And they deliberated on what they called the way forward for Nigeria. The summit's outcome was tagged Ibadan Declaration on Restructuring the Yoruba Agenda 2017. The Yoruba leaders recommended the devolution of 25 items on the exclusive list in the 1999 Constitution as amended. Now, these range from custom duties to exchange control, currency, coinage, and legal tender, and of course, arms, ammunition, and explosives, citizenship, naturalization, and aliens, amongst others. The document outlined 13 proposals, which it described as a summary of contributions of Yoruba groups and the irreducible minimums to create a just and equitable federation where all nationalities and peoples in Nigeria would live.
And we are saying the condition you have now that is causing trouble is created by the military in 1966, not before. And we say go back to what brought us together until the military separated us. That's what all the regions, all the members in the south are saying. And we are farming all this in the western region. That the Yorubas, that is where we are.
Structure Nigeria, liberate the productive capacity of every section of Nigeria, let prosperity return to the lives of Nigerians. That's the way forward. That's what the Yoruba people demand. We do not want to live in a country that is declining perpetually. We want to live in a country that has a chance to progress and to become a great country in the world.
It's inevitable. Because the truth of the matter is that since 1914, there has been only one constitution made by the civilians, and that is the 1963. All the constitutions that came after 1963 were military donations. And people are saying, let us now have a truly people's constitution based on a restructured or a rearranged Nigeria, based on the agreement that we had in 1963 Republican Constitution. And that structuring has become inevitable to be able to dismantle the complexity and the contradictions that make up today's Nigeria, so that Nigeria can be peaceful, Nigeria can have progress, Nigeria can rapidly develop and fulfill its destiny as a giant of Africa.
We should review the Southern National Conference, where the issue of restructuring must be addressed. And our nation and other nations inside can live together in harmony. At the end of the day, a nation will emerge from a country which is prosperous. Today, we want a Nigeria to be, we don't want Nigeria to disagree, but we want a Nigeria where each region will be able to develop at its own rate and develop its culture, and eventually there will be prosperity and the nation will evolve.
I'm a monarch for peace. I'm here to just mediate and make sure that everything is done very peacefully to the glory of God, and for the youth of Yoruba land to be taken care of, and most importantly for us not to focus on hate speeches, for us to be very peaceful in everything we're doing. We can pass our message in a very peaceful way.
In all ramifications, the young and the old, the radical and the conservative are saying exactly the same thing. And what they are saying is that beyond some of those things that divide us as a people, we must come together because we all believe that we need to restructure our country.
We are here to take a stand. Since 1950 in this Ibadan, when Nigeria had a constitutional conference, the Yoruba voted for federalism. And we are still on that because Nigeria today is regressing. We are not developing. And we believe that we have to look at a new structure for this country to move away from consumption to productivity.
Yoruba leaders and elders in Ibadan on Thursday. Now, the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, has also been speaking on the unity of Nigeria. It called on Nigerians to hold firm the purpose of God for the nation called Nigeria and pray for peace and unity.
There must be restructuring. Unless there's a restructuring, I fear and dare to say that we will crash at this rate. I'm not prophesying any doom. I'm not a pessimistic person. It's not that I don't believe it's not that I don't believe in victory and all that, but at this rate, where people are being oppressed, where those whose vineyard produce the money. At this rate, where those who make the money are being suppressed and they are not allowed to have a say in the money they make. At this rate, where the center is heavily loaded with money, and then the states and local governments are not having anything to celebrate.
Well, the National Orientation Agency has also embarked on a strategic campaign on social media platforms to reach out to Nigerian youth especially and confront hate speech. The campaign is tagged Say No to Hate Speech. The Director General of the agency, Garba Abari, has more.
You will all agree with us that all has not been well with our unity, sense of integrity as a nation. And over the last few weeks, the country has been passing through very interesting times. And one of the very key stakeholders that have a very big responsibility in addressing and reducing the tension and the ensuring that there is no further escalation of the kind of very disharmonious sense of feeling we are passing through as a country is the media. Not only the fact that the media entertain and the influence and the educate, but the media has now become a very cardinal player in agenda setting and the monitor. And therefore, your role in what becomes of our country, especially in this point in time, is of an unquantifiable value. It is for this reason that we deem it fit to call all of you seated here before us to express our concern as a government and to crave the indulgence of all of you and by extension of all the well-meaning Nigerians towards addressing an issue that is threatening to consume all of us.
The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT. Join us to build bridges of unity.
Thank you so much for staying with us. And on this very beautiful afternoon, we are joined in the studio by a lawyer, an economist, a former Minister of Information in Nigeria, and of course, the President General of the APES Igbo Socio-Cultural Group, Oha-Na-Eze, Ndi-Igbo, Dr. John Nnia Nwodo. Thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you once again for having me.
Welcome. Right. Well, I'm sure you are very familiar as the foremost leader of in Igbo land today, of the agitations from almost every corner in Nigeria today about restructuring. What comes to mind immediately to ask you is, what you think is responsible for this upsurge, this renewed agitation and calls for the restructuring of a Nigeria that is almost 60 years old after independence?
Well, you know, the history of Nigeria is unique in many respects. We sadly had a civil war in 1967. That was an avoidable civil war. And what triggered it off was, in my view, the inability to keep to an agreement for constitutional governance acceptable to all sides of the country. Whatever happened with the coup within the army could easily have been resolved in Aburi. But when Aburi failed, the country was inevitably on the path to war. 50 years after such a war, which claimed many lives and may their souls rest in peace, the environment that existed before the war is replaying itself. And it is doing so for the following reasons. One, in 1979 and in 1999, we had constitutions for this country written by the military. They were not an elected group. They were those who seized power by force, which if they had failed would have been a criminal offense, a mutiny. But we all accepted in it, served in it, in order to ensure that there was good governance. The present constitution that we are operating in Nigeria lacks autochthonous characteristic of law. In jurisprudence, you would say the acceptability of a law makes the law potent. When I was going to school, when I was in the London School of Economics reading law, my criminal law teacher told me that in preaching acceptability of a law, he used the speed limit as an example. He said it's obeyed more in breach. Many people on their way to the airport in M5, they exceed the speed limit. And the police looks away because there's so much disobedience rather than obedience that you would arrest the entire traffic if you have to. The disenchantment with our constitution is widespread. It cuts across every part of Nigeria. And it has affected Nigeria in every sphere of human endeavor. I give you a few examples. When I was going to school, I started school in primary school. The school I went to, St. Patrick's River Valley, is what you would call a rural school in an Enugu municipality setting. I was sent there by my parents because it was run by the Catholic Church, and the Reverend Father who was in charge of the school was a renowned disciplinarian who eventually became a bishop, Bishop Michael Eneja. But what is significant is that my classmate in that school, Peter Enejere, was the junior brother of James Enejere, who was my father's driver. What am I trying to say? There was no school for the minister's son, which my father was as a parliamentary secretary and subsequently Minister of Commerce and Industry, and the driver's son. Chino Achebe went to school in a rural primary school in Ogidi. So did Cyprian Ekwensi. And perhaps Wole Soyinka. The regional arrangements had education as an exclusive responsibility of the regions. There was a competition for the regions which was better. When we went to university, Ahmadu Bello was noted to have the best faculty of architecture. Ibadan was noted to have the best for medicine. Nsukka for engineering and social sciences. Lagos for law. You applied to any university that you wanted to go. When I passed into Ibadan University for my first degree, our results were published in daily times in order of performance. All this rubbish about JAMB and subsequent examination and sorting and so on at school certificate level and university level, they didn't exist. There was no exam rigging. We had send-off parties for passing into university. We were glorified by our classmates. Now, in our secondary schools, we had expatriates in our class, both white and black. In University of Ibadan, we had expatriates from Columbia, from Harvard, coming to do occasional studies. We had expatriate teachers from reputable universities all over the world. Whatever happened to this quality? When I tell my children this story, they think I am in a dreamland. In the hostel in University of Ibadan, our water ran 24 hours. Our bed sheets were washed and given to us twice a week. Our private clothing, limited to 8 pieces of clothing, were washed for us and ironed for us. You were immediately giving an environment conducive to learning. I read every journal published in the world within 1 week of its publication. University lecturers competed for who would publish. We had their textbooks in our university bookshop at very affordable rate because they were subsidized by the university press. What has happened to this? When I was admitted in Parkland Hospital, in Enugu, a government hospital, for malaria, when I was discharged, I didn't want to go, and my parents wanted to slap me because I had omelette for breakfast. I had cornflakes. I had magazines printed. I used to read Reader's Digest and do the quiz on it on my sick bed. The hospital was a home. Where has all this disappeared to?
But some would argue that the constitution as a document in itself is not bad, but perhaps its operation.
This
this
constitution is a victory document. It is a constitution contrived for sharing of national asset rather than production. The constitution talks about how to share national offices. It doesn't recognize merit. It recognizes federal character. The constitution talks about quota. The constitution talks about revenue allocation. And let's come to think about it. You know, those who are opposed to this constitution think that this is a desire for those who are oil producing, mineral producing, to seize their natural wealth that are in their homes and deprive other Nigerians of it and create poverty in other parts of Nigeria. And I think this is myopic. Do you know why? Look, oil is a receding asset in the world today. All major countries in Europe and America have put a deadline of not more than 10 years from now for the non-production of machines powered by crude oil. Cars are going to drive by 2024 in America without fuel. All new cars that will be produced in America.
And even much earlier in France.
Fine. Now, therefore, whatever is this position of oil in our national revenue is going to decline very seriously in a very short while before the children who are born today attain poverty. This is the time to plan for the alternative. And I'm glad this federal government is planning for agriculture, but it's also planning the structure of the federation so that it increases production. When we had regions, you had cocoa in northern Nigeria. You had groundnuts in northern Nigeria. You had cocoa in western Nigeria. You had palm oil in eastern Nigeria. You had rubber in Benin and what have you. And they were export earnings. Now, let me tell you another example. Netherlands is the 18th largest economy in the world. Its cross-sectional area is half of Niger State, 30-something thousand square kilometers, as against 70-something thousand of Niger, one of the 36 administrative units in Nigeria. Its yearly earning from agriculture exports, which is made up of vegetable and dairy, is about $100 billion. The entire oil revenue of Nigeria has never in any financial year attained $100 billion. It shows you where the world is going to. Take California. California is the 6th largest economy in the world and is one state in the United States of America. But it is grown because of human capital development. It has Stanford University, which has pioneered the Silicon Valley, which has pioneered Apple, which has pioneered Google. And when you go to the American Stock Exchange, these are the richest companies on the basis of their stock price. This is where Nigeria should be going. And it cannot happen. Look, if you have a restructured Nigeria, in which the federating units have more autonomy and more control of their natural resources, northern Nigeria will be the richest part of Nigeria, giving its propensity for agricultural development and its endowment in that field. So it's a win-win situation for northern Nigeria.
Your views seem to align somewhat with the views that were expressed in Ibadan just yesterday by the Yoruba leaders who insist that we return to regionalism. Now, can the 1999 Constitution as amended, can it be reviewed, can it be reformed, or do we need to draw up a completely new constitution to encapsulate and take care of some of these things that we are talking about. And where would we be with the concept of regionalism 54 years after the 1963 constitution?
Well, let me tell you, a good job has no alternative. Unless we restructure this country, we will inevitably slide into an uncontrollable crisis. In every part of the country, the youth are out of the grip of the elders. In northern Nigeria, Boko Haram has ravaged the northeast of Nigeria with reckless abandon. In spite of their containment by the Nigerian armed forces, for which I congratulate them, their resort to guerrilla warfare is incendiary, destructive, unpredictable, and a great danger to the reconstruction effort, which has international support in that area of the country. It just shows how idle, jobless youths have passed a vote of no confidence in the system and are looking for a new system. Albeit a very anachronistic system, but that's, as far as they are concerned, given the limit of their understanding, is the best for Nigeria. In South Nigeria, where oil is deposited, a number of the young people are in the creeks. They refine crude oil and sell. They have arms which the Nigerian army cannot afford. They sell our crude oil and bunker them at their pleasure. They kill our armed forces who are supposed to police there because they are angry. They are angry that this is their resource and it's not percolating in their welfare. What would you say to that? In the southeast, they see a persistent policy of marginalization which has crippled them into second-class and third-class citizens. They see a murder of their youths. They get together in Asaba to talk in a football field, they are murdered. There's no inquiry, there's no arrest, there's no prosecution. They get together in Nkpo to protest about their civil rights and obligations. They are murdered with impunity. Nobody's tried. They get together in Aba, they are murdered and nobody tries. They come to Port Harcourt and want to demonstrate in favor of President Trump in the hope that it will hear their cries, and they are murdered. And I call for an inquiry and nobody listens to me. When Transparency International comes, they say 191 people have been killed in Southeast youths without trial. And the response is the Chief of Army Staff appoints a commission of inquiry. He's a very good friend of mine whom I respect his valor in the field. But with respect, our rule of law is fundamentally founded on two principles. The rules of natural justice says thou shalt not be a judge in your own court, and you must hear the two sides of a story. How can you people, armed forces people, to investigate the murder committed by armed forces people in total negation of the separation of our powers in our constitution? These kind of feelings are pent up. They are real. They are vivid. I stay in the province where I feel it on a daily basis. They ask me questions that I cannot answer. But our body politic is insensitive to this.
Now, you have thrown up a number of issues, but let's take a step backwards. You have said, for instance, that the younger generation, the youths of these various regions, seem to be up in arms. They do not seem to buy the positions that the elders and the leaders of the various regions are pushing, the agenda for restructuring. If Nigeria were to be restructured today, do you believe, honestly, that it will assuage the feelings and the aspirations of this younger generation?
I believe so.
Is it that, I mean, they are pushing for an extreme position? The IPOP, for instance, is pushing for secession. In the north, the Boko Haram is asking for an Islamic Republic. In the south, something similar. They are asking for a Niger Delta Republic and all of that. Will the position that the elders are pushing right now for a restructured Nigeria assuage those feelings?
You know that in public discourse, appealing to intellect and appealing to emotions are two routes to which you can lead to a solution. The easiest way to gain temporary support is to appeal to emotions. The young men are emotional, and their emotion is triggered off by extant injustices. But their solution is also emotional because it is not going to be, in the long run, helpful for Nigeria. Look, this is the giant of Africa. Out of every 4 black men in the world, 1 is a Nigerian. In economics, this is what we call economy of scale. If I produce 1 million loaves of bread a day, and I make 1 kobo on it, I make 1 naira on each one of them. I make 1 million naira. But if I produce 100 loaves of bread, I make less. The economies of scale that Nigeria offers to its citizens as a country. First is a large domestic market. Why do you think the Western world is interested in Nigeria? It's not because of our oil. America doesn't buy any oil from Nigeria anymore. But this is a large market. It is an outlet, a potential outlet for the industrial endeavors in the developed countries. As Nigeria grows, our capacity to be interdependent on various parts of the world increases. Our purchasing power increases their own production. And so, destroying that productive capacity, that economy of scale, that largeness, in international fora, either in ECOWAS, in AU, as well as in the United Nations, we are reckoned. We are probably going to be the 3rd or the 4th most populous country in the world in the next 20 years. This is a world power. But if it is not well administered, it will continue to be a laughingstock of the world.
Now, talking about restructuring, I'm still on that. Now, different groups, different persons, different nationalities seem to have a different perspective to restructuring. For you as the leader of the Igbos in Nigeria today, what would be the nature, the framework, and content of a restructured Nigeria?
Well, you know, the tragedy of our country is that divisions do not allow us to disaggregate emotions from realities. We've had a constitutional conference in 2014, no matter how contrived. Some say they were not elected. Some say that they were not equally representative. Whatever it is, it was the people of Nigeria from all the constituent parts of Nigeria, and very knowledgeable people, chaired by a former Chief Justice of Nigeria. They produced a document. That document has been requested by the National Assembly. Nobody has given it to them. 2 years and a few months into this administration, nobody has. Nobody has brought it. Is not even sold for us to buy, to synthesize. What did these people waste our resources and our money and their time and energy to put together for our country?
Several billions of naira.
Precisely. It is all wasted. That's intellectual work. And these people burnt midnight oils. They went into serious negotiations to see what would be acceptable to every part of Nigeria. It is dumped in the dustbin of history. That is unpatriotic in my view. That is a starting point. Because if we had those conclusions, we could bring those conclusions as the basis for debate. You know, look, my friend, you know, when I was growing up, a Katsina man called Umoru Altini was mayor of Enugu. He was a candidate of NCNC, sponsored by Dr. Azikiwe, to be mayor of Enugu. Nobody in Enugu cared where he came from. Umoru was private secretary to Premier Azikiwe. He comes from Oha-Na-Eze. His friend Momo, may his soul rest in peace, was my best friend. We didn't care where we came from. When I went to London School of Economics and Political Science, Emaju Kudumi was my closest friend. I slept in his apartment or he slept in my apartment. I served under President Shehu Shagari. His first son, Bala, and I were very close friends. We ate with his father on the table. His father treated me the same way he treated Bala. I enjoyed paternal guidance from President Shehu Shagari. And I'm not Northern. I do not know what has killed this country. I went to University of Ibadan, a Yoruba-dominated university. And I ran for president of Students' Union. And I beat the Yoruba boy at Degboro. Yorubas preferred me to their own because it was an atmosphere in which you were judged according to your capabilities. That was the Nigeria that I grew up in. That was the Nigeria I was born. And that was the productive Nigeria, where every region was competing for who would outdo the other. You build University of Nigeria in Nsukka, they build University of Ife in Ife. They build Ahmed Bello the same day. You start Golden Guinea breweries in Umuahia. They start Nigerian breweries in Lagos. You start Kaduna Textile, they start Abba Textile the following day. You start cement factory in Kalago, they start another one in Lagos the following day. I mean, the scholarships were available. I don't know the last time we had scholarships for people. Children of the poor who were intelligent, they were not stopped from going to school. They were given scholarships. The system has killed endeavor, honest endeavor. It has killed competition. It has killed productivity. Even selection for office. The perquisites of office were more important than the production in the office. I don't believe that legislators should be full-time. In the First Republic, they were not, even at the national level. They went on vacation, they came back, and they earned according to their sittings. And they were recruited from the most productive elements of society. The leaders of intellect in schools, in voluntary agencies, in sciences. And the quality, go and read the Hansard in the First Republic, and you see the quality of debate in the Northern House of Assembly, in the Western House of Assembly, in the Eastern House of Assembly. And these were people who didn't go to university, but the quality of their education. Look, my friend, you know, I have a father whose education was limited in the terms of the fact that he went to government college Umuahia, he went to a diploma course and what have you, but he didn't go to education, he didn't go to university like I did. But my father corrected my own letters. When I was in secondary school, my father was building a secondary school in my village and had requested my principal to give him the best students in physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics from higher school. In those days, you have to teach for 9 months or work in a government ministry before you go to university. And my name was announced in the assembly hall that the principal would like to see me after assembly. And usually that means you would be rusticated. When I went, he gave me the message for my father. And I was so petrified that I didn't even ask him for exit, for permission to leave the school compound. But luckily, then, letters posted the same day in Enugu got to its destination the same day. And the postmaster had not come. And my classmates volunteered me with a writing pad and a stamp. And I wrote, my principal brother Aloysius has asked me to do this, and posted to Daddy. Daddy then would use a red pen to correct our letters and post it back to you, and you will correct the letter and rewrite it, and he will put a self-addressed envelope. And my father wrote on my letter. After my principal, he put a comma. He turned around and said, my principal and brother Aloysius refer to one and the same person. In grammar, this is called noun in apposition and must be separated by comma or parenthesis. Here was a man whose education is not equal to mine. I wonder how many graduates in Nigeria today can correct their children in this way. This is what we are rooting for.
So for you, the starting point would be the report of the 2014 National Conference.
Correct.
That report, as you are aware, is also mired in controversy because some of those who participated in that conference, who were delegates to that conference, have since dissociated themselves from the recommendations of that conference.
This is purely political. It took them 3 years. And let me ask you, Imoni. I am in this theater now, addressing you, and it's recorded. It's in history. For me to come tomorrow
and say the things I said here, I no longer agree with them. Watch CNN. They will go back to history about the things I've said from my days as Minister of Aviation, Minister for Information, and they'll contradict my views to show that I am not consistent. Now, if you voted in a conference, you spoke, you moved motions, and you come back 3 years later and say, I don't agree with it, it says so. But whatever it is, you cannot disagree with a book without reading it. Assuming for the sake of the argument that the conclusions are erroneous and they are not leading Nigeria, let us have it. Let it be debated in our parliaments at the state and national level. Let us crystallize what is good and bad in it, and let us amend the ones that are bad. But to be in a state of inertia is unpatriotic and is leading us to disaster.
You have been quoted as having said that no ethnic group in Nigeria has as much stake in Nigeria as the Igbos.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you ask me, I think that Igbos are the typical example of those who consider Nigeria as their country. There is no part of this country outside Igbo land that you go to that outside the indigenous population, the next highest population are not Igbos. They don't live there to exploit the people there and contribute nothing to the development of the place. They build houses. They build their homes there. They build industrial enterprises. They contribute to the economy. If you go to Sokoto, an Igbo man there has a tomato puree factory. If you go to Ogun State, an Igbo man there has a university. If you go to Jos, Igbos built a secondary school there. They built in Kaduna. Igbos invest everywhere in Nigeria and regard it as their home. If Nigeria collapses to everyone going to their home now, the people who will be most disadvantaged are Igbos. Look, following the quick notice, I took a census of Igbos in northern Nigeria. And we are still counted. But at the last count, we have 11.6 million Igbos in northern Nigeria. Of course, 2.1 million of them are in Abuja. How many non-Igbos are in Igbo land? I ask you. You are in a position to verify.
Do the young people of Igbo land understand this? Do they have these figures? If they do, why is there this agitation for a sovereign state of Biafra?
The young people in Igbo land feel that we, their fathers, are unable to negotiate a better status for them in Nigeria. I don't think you visited Igbo land recently. A senior advocate of Nigeria from your area visited there and wrote a story about Igbos under siege. Ozekomo. Now, if you come to eastern Nigeria, and I've said it to the acting president when the president was not here, every major city in Igbo land is policed at entrance, exit, and in the middle by a combined group of soldiers and policemen. If they were looking for arms and ammunition, for drugs and what have you, there would be national security imperatives, and I will applaud them. But they are toll gates. I have films of them, and that's why I can afford to say it. As Minister of Information, I know the consequences of what I am saying. Now, these people extort money from ordinary Igbos day in, day out. It has gone to the bizarre level that commercial vehicles, fires vehicles, drop the money on the floor as if it was a man feeding his chicken with corn. And the policemen run after it. I have got video coverage of this. I have got it in video. I have shouted from rooftops about it. Instead, it persists the bomb.
But this is not limited to the southeast alone. It happens almost everywhere.
It is more abundant in the southeast. It is more abundant. You cannot go out in the southeast if you want to get to where you're going in time without a word of change. You have to drop it everywhere in order to have free passage. That is being a slave in your own country. So you can imagine how the young people feel. That's the number one. They feel, I drive from Abuja to Enugu. Between Enugu and Onitsha, I recorded 17 checkpoints, a distance of about 65 kilometers. Between here and the borders of Benue and Enugu, I do not record over 6 checkpoints. And they don't really take any money from you. But once you get to Enugu, every mile, every 2 miles, waiting you carry. Imoni, that is the atmosphere. Now, I know that everywhere in the country, people are unemployed. But it's worse where I come from. Our representation in government is abysmally low.
Now, that brings us to the point of the cry of marginalization by the Southeast. There are those who find it difficult to accept that the Igbos are the only marginalized people or the most marginalized people in Nigeria. Out of perhaps about 400 ethnic nationalities in Nigeria, and they say, why is it the Igbos alone that are always crying of marginalization? They have produced a head of state, they have produced service chiefs, they have produced ministers, they have produced CBN governors, they have produced ministers. And
Imoni, I'm surprised that this is your trajectory.
No.
I'm saying how many heads of states have Igbos produced?
They produce one.
Fine. How many heads of states have people from Western Nigeria produced?
Perhaps 2 or 3.
Fine. Now, you see, that's not just the point. Because of the war, the Igbos were excluded from the bulk of the federal civil service on accordance of the war. And nature abhors a vacuum. Naturally, other people fill the position. Since they came back, you know that the recruitment policy here in Nigeria is man no man. They've been sidelined. And so they are like little drops of water in an ocean here and there. And I take one area as a typical example. Take the entire security structure of Nigeria. The chief of defense staff is not an Igbo man. The chief of the service chiefs from the 3 arms of the armed forces, none is an Igbo man. The inspector general is not an Igbo man. The head of SSS is not an Igbo man. The head of Nigerian Intelligence Agency is not an Igbo man. The head of Federal Restructuring is not an Igbo man. The head of Civil Defense is not an Igbo man. The Customs head is not an Igbo man. The Immigration head is not an Igbo man. What else do you? The Minister of Defense is not an Igbo man. The Minister of Internal Affairs is not. Just one typical and sensitive sector of the Nigeria's management. Perhaps the most typical. There is a clear vote of confidence on an entire ethnic group that constitutes what is supposed to be a federation. That is a unity of independent units. It's a complete vote of confidence. We don't trust you enough to come to this area. My friend, if you don't see the marginalization, I don't want to talk about the infrastructure. Niger Bridge has remained the way it is since the end of the war till now, in spite of provisions in the budget for it every year. Nominal provisions that are incapable of. When was the first one built? Look, my friend, look at the roads there. It's impossible to drive from Enugu to Onitsha. It's practically impossible. Fashola was there the other day. The state governments are now doing federal routes in the southeast. It's impossible to drive from Aba to Port Harcourt. It's practically impossible.
These are the result of cumulative years of neglect.
Well, unfortunately, these cumulative years of neglect does not reflect in Abuja to Kaduna, either by rail or by road. And this is what they see. It does not reflect in Lagos, Shagamu, and what have you. You can see, constant, the amount of work that is going on. I was on that road yesterday on my way to Ibadan. The amount of work that is going on both on rail and on road is unbelievable. Goose and the gander. You must make everyone feel a sense that we are all children of the same parents. This is the crux of the matter. And what is more important, in the southeast and the south-south, this is where the cake is baked. 4 of the 5 states in the southeast are oil producing, some of which contribute to the national revenue. So why?
Well, I wish we had a lot more time to look at these issues. Perhaps we will bring you back to the studio at some other time when it's convenient for you to look at some of the issues that we have not been able to touch on today. But on a final note on this call, what is it? What is your projection of a Nigeria, of the dream of the Igbo man?
We want a restructured Nigeria in which the component and federating units have independence over vital issues that touch on the lives of the people. There is no reason why education should be on concurrent legislatively. Domestic security should be the exclusive preserve of the states. And that means the judiciary also should deal with state laws that are made in the federating units up to a Supreme Court level. And federal laws will come to the Federal Supreme Court. Now, infrastructure should be the responsibility. There are too many federal parastatals eating deep into the prerogative of the federating units and wasting assets that will be better. My state, Enugu State, is third in the rung of the ladder from federally generated revenue. But it is one of the 4 states that pays salaries every month and develops infrastructure because of good management. My governor, who has 2 master's degrees in finance, has shown that he's a good manager. This is a typology of what a restructured Nigeria could do, because it would have given him more resources. And it wouldn't only have been reflected in roads, in payment of salary. Our educational system would be second to none. Our health system would be second to none. Once you select the good man, he has the resources and his area for development is limited. He will do a lot.
Thank you so much. We have had as our guest on the People, Politics and Power this Friday, Dr. John Nnia Nwodo. He is the President General of the APES Igbo Social Cultural Organization, Oha-Na-Eze Ndi-Igbo, a lawyer by training, an economist, and of course, former minister in Nigeria, was once Minister of Information and Minister of Aviation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you so much.
Again at some other time.
Thank you.
Welcome. That's our program for today. Please join us again next week, Monday, when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. My name is Imoni Amarere. Do have yourself a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.